Hello and welcome listeners to Square Talking. This is the Cheshire Freemasons Podcast. Your hosts today, Keith Lloyd, Neil Lloyd and Iain Collins. And what you can expect from the podcast is a lively, light-hearted chat about Freemasonry in Cheshire and what you can expect if you were to become a Freemason or indeed if you are a Freemason. So the setting of our recording today, we're in a delightful Cheshire View, which is a Freemasons Hall out in Cheshire. This is where my own lodge meets, which is called Comms Lodge. I say this is the location where we meet. On the podcast, you might have noticed that I mentioned that one of the other hosts is Neil Lloyd, and my name is Keith Lloyd, and we are both indeed brothers, both biological and Masonic. And I'd like to just give you a bit of insight into why we started this journey together. So as I'm sure you can imagine, it is a little bit unusual to have Masons that are both biological and Masonically involved. And it really is quite a unique thing that I myself joined Masonry and then I invited Neil to join it along with me. And I think it's been a really positive thing which we've done, and it's certainly brought a different perspective into Freemasonry than most people have. And saying that, that passes me along to allow Neil to introduce himself.
Hello, I'm Neil. I'm a member of Charing Cross Lodge number 4913. They meet in Clifton Road in Birkenhead. We initially both started off in the same lodge, but then personal circumstances change and you've moved to a lodge which is more conducive to your personal circumstances at the moment, which is something as we go along, we'll discuss things like that. And, Masonry fitting into your life doesn't impose itself upon you. I've been a Freemason now for 11 years, and I'm also a pig at Comms Lodge. That's a permanently invited guest where, I regularly go to their meetings as well because, as I say, you're a member of Comms Lodge and also one of our best friends is the secretary of that lodge.
Yeah, indeed. So as just to clarify, being a pig doesn't mean that you spend all your time with the nose in a trough at a meal.
Although sometimes a festive board is a bit like that.
So would you just like to explain what a festive board is then now?
So a festive board is the meal we have after we've been into the lodge room. So we'll go up and do some business in the lodge room. We might talk a little bit about what we get up to there later on. And then afterwards, we all go downstairs and we have a lovely meal at what we call the festive board.
Okay, so just going back to joining Freemasonry, and I mentioned that when I joined and then I invited you to come along. So from my own point of view, for a long time I'd been interested in Freemasonry because I know it's got a long history, but also it comes up in a few times in media and on films and things, and I was interested to see what was true and what wasn't true in respect of that. And so that was what drove me down the route of joining Freemasonry. And how it happened was there was a chap at work that was in Freemasonry. He knew I was interested in it. He asked me if I wanted to join or come along to what's called a white table, which is you find out about Freemasonry, usually a social event. Went along, decided to join, signed the papers to join, and that was it really. So what made you want to join Freemasonry specifically now?
Well, I have an interest in true crime, and especially when I was younger, there was a book which was incredibly popular by an author called Stephen Knight, and it was called Jack the Ripper, The Final Solution. And in that, the author posited that it was the Freemasons who were responsible for the Jack the Ripper murders. And being a true crime book, this really tantalised me. And then a few years after that, there was a film called From Hell, starred Johnny Depp. And in that, again, it was Jack the Ripper and the Freemasons were responsible. And in that, they actually showed what they thought an initiation was like. And again, that got me going. And then there was a few other famous cases where it's alleged that there was Masonic involvement. And it just really did tantalise me and wanted me to know a little bit more about this organisation that seemed to be getting so much malign information out there about it. Obviously, you joined and you invited me, so I jumped at the opportunity. And you find out that a lot of what is said in the press and books is just made up rubbish, really.
And I think that's the thing with misconceptions, isn't it? That it's Jack the Ripper and what have you. It is just all misconceptions, and it is just nonsense, really. But saying that, from media, you do sometimes get a positive impression of Freemasonry, such as the Dan Brown books and what have you. So it's really interesting. That's something else that we'll be going into on this podcast is some of the misconceptions and, blowing a few of these myths away. So this brings me on to our other co-host, Iain Collins. Hello, Iain.
Hello.
And so do you want to tell us a bit about yourself and your personal path into Freemasonry?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Iain Collins. I'm 39 years old. I joined Freemasonry when I was about 25. We were introduced, I joined at the same time as my father, which is an unusual thing in Freemasonry because normally in Freemasonry, fathers initiate their sons. However, we both joined at the same time through a family friend. And it's something as I've always grown up with and been interested in, as you said, from the Dan Brown books and things like that. And I have a passion for sort of history and learning of things about sort of old school history, King Solomon, sort of that time of history fascinates me a little bit. And that's what drove me to want to learn a little bit more about Freemasonry. And we got the door slightly opened to us through a family friend, and we both sort of jumped at the chance. I think I coerced my dad a little bit, which I'm actually surprised, Neil, that you weren't coerced by Keith and he didn't bully you into coming along. I'm sure he didn't, but
not much.
But no, it was great. I actually joined the month before my dad, and it was nice to see him get initiated into Freemasonry as well. But yeah, I've been in since I'm about 25, so I'm in Bebington Lodge, which meets at Port Sunlight. And it used to meet in Ellesmere Port. Fortunately, we had to move due to the building being closed a few years ago, but we flourished there, and it's something that I'm really passionate about and really enjoy. I'm really looking forward to delving into what Freemasonry is about and discussing loads of different topics and channels and avenues with you guys over the next couple of weeks, months on different episodes.
So it's really interesting with what you were saying there, that it looks like all three of us have got kind of like quite unique perspectives on Freemasonry, what with Neil and I being brothers and you joining with your father. So what were your first impressions? I mean, how much about Freemasonry did you know, Iain, before you came in? And to follow that along, what were your first impressions when you did actually become a Freemason?
So I always thought that you had to be invited into Freemasonry, and that was one of the big misconceptions that I think nowadays I think in the past that was the sort of way that we used to work, but not anymore with the new initiatives from United Grand Lodge, where we're actually really trying to put ourselves out there. And if people are interested in Freemasonry, who knew that you could actually sign up through online these days, and that you don't actually have to be invited anymore into Freemasonry. We have the ability to just put some details into the website and someone will get in touch with you. But I always thought that you had to be invited. That was one of the things that was putting us not necessarily off, but it was I was waiting for that opportunity, and then fortunately for me, that opportunity presented itself. However, I imagine that for some people that might not be the case, and I didn't really know what to expect, because I know you can do a lot of Googling and things like that, and there is information out there on the internet, and we will discuss some of that stuff that's out on the internet. But I also didn't want to spoil it for myself, because that's one of the big things I think about that. If you do decide to join Freemasonry, it's about that journey of discovery and not spoiling it for yourselves by looking at the internet. Because if you do decide to join Freemasonry, I think the best thing to do is do your research first and understand the organization that you're coming into from legitimate sources, not rubbish sources. Go to like United Grand Lodge of England or the Cheshire Freemasons website and or talk to people who are on there and really do that research. But then once you decide to join, I think the best thing to do is stop looking at stuff, because you can actually spoil it for yourself, if that makes sense. I don't know if you guys have ever had any experience.
Yeah, I mean, the initiation when you're brought in, first night at the lodge, it is something special.
It certainly is.
And my overall impression of that evening is just being overawed by it all. Without any spoilers, there's so much happening for you to take in, and I immediately wanted to see somebody else being initiated so I could understand what happened to me a little bit better. So definitely, do your reading around Freemason. Do your reading around Freemasonry to make sure it's something that you want to be part of, but then don't spoil it for yourselves.
Yeah, I mean, and Iain, you're saying that you were initiated and then your father was initiated after you. What was it like watching somebody else being initiated after you've only just joined yourself?
I think for everyone that's been through that process, it is a very confusing time. But I was also excited to see what my father thought of the events that unfold. And it does start to put things into place a little bit. And I think in the next episode, we will maybe delve into a little bit more about what Freemasonry is. But for me, it was quite a special occasion to be able to share that, because I think it's not as usual in Freemasonry for you to be able to witness your actual parent or father going through it, whereas normally it's the other way around, where the father figure witnesses the son going into it.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, it is. I think it is quite an unusual thing to happen. Which, as I say, it's an unusual thing for a brother to initiate their own brother as well into Freemasonry. I know from my point of view that when it comes to the initiation part, several initiation ceremonies, sitting through them to actually figure out what was happening, what all the different roles were that were going on, and who was who in the lodge. And I think that's very much something which you pick up by osmosis, but as you go to more meetings, you pick different things up. And I think the other thing for me as well, when it came to the initiation, was how friendly everybody was, how welcome I was made to feel when I joined Freemasonry, because it really is a proper brotherhood, and everyone is working together to achieve the same objectives. So this brings me quite nicely on to why we started this podcast. So really what we wanted to do is we put a podcast in place which not just explains Freemasonry, but also explains Freemasonry in the context of Cheshire as well, which is where we're based. So in later episodes, we'll be speaking to the Provincial Grand Master and different roles within Freemasonry, and what they do and what their opinions are and what they think the future is going to look like. We also want to look at things like what other people want to find out, we're open to people sending in questions. If you've got any question and you want us to ask anything specific, then, I'll give the details out at the end of the podcast. And the podcast itself, it's for new Masons, it's for the curious or long-time brethren. It's for anyone that wants to find out about Freemasonry and what it involves and what we do. And also what we're going to want to look at is, as has been mentioned, is busting some of the myths that are out there, but also revealing some of the things which we do. So, one of the things about Freemasonry is that, as I was saying before, when you look at the initiation ceremony, it is very allegorical, and there's a story being told, and that Freemasonry itself is part of a tradition of storytelling, and that is how we work with each other in the lodges. We're telling each other stories, and I think that's part of really as a modern tradition really across the world is using storytelling to explore things and explore themes. What do you think, Iain?
I think that I am super excited to go down all of these avenues with you both. And there's so many areas in Masonry that we can explore. And as I've said, or my personal belief, and which I've said in the past, is that Masonry is a house of many rooms. And we've got so many doors that we can go through with you guys, the listeners. And we really are looking forward to hearing what you want to hear about. So please do send in your thoughts if there's a subject I've said that you want us to cover. We're really excited to delve into that as a team and talk about that. And some of the guests that we've got lined up, we are super excited to listen to what they have to say and tell their story, and also share that with you and try and show what Masonry is about in a good light.
I once heard an elder brethren, he was asked, how do you describe Freemasonry? And he said he always tells people that effectively it is amateur dramatics with fine dining. I think fitting into what you were saying about the initiation and the ritual work that we do is effectively us telling the story with lessons, important life lessons interwoven into that. And I think summing it up as amateur dramatics with fine dining is a good capitulation of essentially what we do.
There's so much that we can talk about. So Neil, what does Freemasonry mean to you?
Well, it is the companionship you get from your brothers in the lodge, and it's also another important part for me is the satisfaction you get from the charitable work that we do. We are a large charitable organisation. We're always encouraged to donate to our charity fund. It is mandatory. No one is forcing us to give money, but part of the reason why a lot of people join the organisation is because they do find out that we are one of the largest charitable providers in the country. In fact, I believe in the 2022 to 2023, we gave away something like 51, nearly 52 million to charitable causes. And it isn't just other Masons who benefit from that charitable giving. That money goes to other community-based organisations. Money has been given to schools, smaller local charities, even individuals where people have come to us and said, we're in need, we need XYZ for whatever reason. And we've helped them and given them some money towards wherever they need. That is another big important thing about Freemasonry for me.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think that for me, Freemasonry is a chance for me to share some time with my father, but it's also about friendship, companionship, the charities that we are all leaning towards. We help so many people from different walks of life. We've recently, Cheshire has recently donated £300,000 to 10 different charities, each getting £30,000 to do some really great work in our local area, which is a fantastic achievement. And to be a small part of that is truly excellent and noble. But I suspect that there will be lots of different opinions on what Freemasonry is. But for me, it's that chance to better oneself and to spend some time with some people that care about what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, how it's influenced me is it really has influenced my personal growth. It's increased my confidence in public speaking, because as part of being a Freemason is you do stand up in a room in front of people and you do bits of amateur dramatics, as Neil so nicely put it. But public speaking, I've met people through Freemasonry that I would not have usually met in any other walk of life, and it's everyone from farmers to doctors, and I guarantee that whenever I've gone visiting to different lodges or I've been doing different things, I've always had fascinating conversations with people.
You can always spot a Freemason because we use weird words like inculcated. It's not a word that we use in normal life. And then when someone says, "Oh, that was inculcated this," I'm like, "Hang on a minute. I know you're a Freemason."
Yeah. And it is, well, again, broadening your vocabulary, learning new and unusual words. Although I can't think I've used inculcated in my daily life. But yeah, and I think that's part of the thing that I have got out of it. It's allowed me to grow as a person, but also it's allowed me to meet some really interesting and fascinating people and get their perspectives on life and their experiences on life as well.
I don't think anywhere else you put such a diverse group of people into a room, because it doesn't matter what race, what social status you have. Is that when you come into the lodge, you could be sat next to, like me, I'm an airline pilot, but someone who's a doctor or a painter or a plumber or any walks of life all together, all under one banner, and you get some fantastic stories that come out, and the chance to mingle with people that you might not normally gel with. And that's where that festive board comes in that you were talking about, Neil, later on, where you sometimes get sat next to people and you think, wow, I don't know if I'm going to have anything to talk to these people about, but suddenly a whole world opens up and you get lost in conversation for that festive board.
I mean, when I was initiated, going back to the initiation ceremony, I was sat next to a chap that at the time was in his 90s, and he'd been a fighter pilot in World War II. And the conversation that you can have with somebody like that, it's not like, meeting somebody on the street or anything. I had a really long and interesting chat with him and about his experiences. And it's things like that where you can meet people that you wouldn't usually meet in your walk of life. I find that really enjoyable.
I had a similar experience. I think you were there where we got talking to a chap after the ritual had finished and we'd gone down to the bar area. And it was an elder gentleman who'd been in the army and he'd been in Burma. And he started telling us this very traumatic story, really, about him being in the jungle. As he was finishing off the story, the entire room had just gone quiet and everyone was listening to him and his experience. And as you say, you learn things from people and their life experience that we would never experience ourselves or have knowledge of ourselves. And that's a wonderful thing.
It is indeed, yeah.
Excellent. So, gents, this brings us on to one section that I'm super excited about, which is our regular segment that we're going to be talking to some of the guests about. So I hope you've been practicing for this section. So what I'm proposing is that we do with every guest that we have on over the next season is we talk about what would you place into the Masonic time capsule, which was going to be opened in 100 years. So this is going to be a fictitious time capsule. So it doesn't have any size limits. You can put in anything you want. And what would you put in? I'm going to put in, as I said, my signed copy of today's script, so that in 100 years' time they can say, what are these podcast things all about? We have a little script here that we are sort of looking at to a certain degree, which is providing us some pointers. But I'm going to sign this tonight, and that's going to go into my time capsule. Gents, what are you putting in?
I would put in a copy of Freemasonry Today. That's the magazine which we receive as all Freemasons. And it gives an overview of what's going on in Freemasonry, not just in our country but across the world, and it has little historical insights into it and various news articles, and I always find it an interesting read. But if I was to put it into a time capsule, I'd be quite interested myself when 100 years' time, when they open this time capsule, do they still have magazines in 100 years' time? Do they know, do they still read, or is information directly plugged into the brain and downloaded? So I think it'd be quite an interesting historical artifact for somebody to find in a time capsule.
Maybe we could even do an episode of what we think Freemasonry is going to look like in 100 years' time.
Oh yeah, that would
with
be
the VR revolution that is.
Yeah, would we? This is the thing. Would we actually meet in person, or will we all be in virtual lodge rooms?
We all donning our VR headsets and joining from our living room. Neil, what's your thoughts?
I am going to put in our little blue book. Now, for those who aren't Freemasons, when you join, you're given a little blue book which contains the 3 degrees. And
not the singing group.
Not the singing group, no, not the group that Prince Charles was quite enamoured with. It's a little book that we have to learn between joining and then ultimately when you become the master of your lodge. And by that point, you will have learned every single word in that book. Now,
every single word. Wow.
Really?
That is a bold statement there by Brother Neil. Every single word.
So Neil, having gone through them being a master of the lodge, and you having learned every single word in the blue book, would you like to quote some for us?
I don't think we can do that. Not if there's uninitiated listening. But that ritual in the book, in theory, has stayed the same since Masonry started, but it hasn't. Every now and again, they do make changes to the ritual. I think the last time was in the 1980s when they did some updates and some editing of it. So I'd like to put the little blue book in. So in 100 years' time, we can look at that and see if the actual things that we do in the lodge room has changed at all.
Excellent. I think this is something to be really excited about. And listeners, if you want to send in some of your ideas of what could go in the Masonic time capsule, we'd be really excited to read some of them out and ask some of our guests that are coming on as to what they want to put in. And my final thing that we're going to endeavor to do with all of our guests is to summarize Freemasonry into 3 words. And for me, I've gone with fantastic fraternal friendship. I did a little alliteration there, gents. So that's going to be my sum up of 3 words for Freemasonry. So I'm really looking forward to hearing, especially what some of our guests have to say on this. But gents, I'm coming over to you. So I hope you've had your thinking caps on.
Yeah, I think I would go with fellowship, friendship, and growth. So that's growth both as a person outside of the lodge and growth as a person inside of the lodge. What about you, Neil?
I would go with charity, brotherhood.
We're coming back to episode 2 for Neil to have a think about what his first word is.
Should have known this. I should have known this was coming because we planned it, haven't we? But my mind has just gone blank.
So you'll have to tune in next episode, viewers, to hear what Neil has to say then.
I mean, obviously, Neil's head is full of having learned the whole of the little blue book, so he can't think of a single word.
There's so many words that must be crammed in from learning that whole blue book. Yeah, anyway, Neil, if you want to wrap this episode up for us.
Yeah, so just wanted to thank the listeners for tuning into our podcast. If you've got any comments, anything you want us to say or give us any feedback, please do contact us. We've got an email address, which is podcast@cheshiremasons.co.uk. And you can also find us on the Cheshire Freemasons website, which is cheshirefreemasons.org.uk/square-talking. We're also going to be going onto social media in the coming weeks. I believe we're going to have an Instagram page. We're also going to have a presence on the TikTok.
Who's doing that then?
I don't know, but I did see a video from the from the Cheshire Freemasons on the TikTok.
We're looking forward to the digital episode where we talk to the digital comms team and they can tell us all about their output.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it is. We are a forward-facing organisation now, and say engaging with people wherever we can, making ourselves known to people. So if you, dear listener, if you want to promote this podcast with your friends, Masons or non-Masons, then please do so, because everybody's welcome to listen to us. So I think that draws a line under this episode of Square Talking. Please do join us again next time when we'll have more topics of conversation. And for the next episode, we'll be looking at what is Freemasonry really.
Ooh, can't wait for that one.
Yeah, and hopefully by that point, Neil will have thought of his third word.
So he needs to be practicing. We'll be coming back to you, Neil.
Yeah. Okay, so see you next time. Thanks for joining us, and see you again.
Bye-bye.
Bye.